Hello, awesome people. I hope you are having just an absolutely amazing day today. Today, I thought it would be fun for me to do my top 10 films, horror from the 60s and the 70s, the classic films from that era, and so forth. I started this list in sci-fi stuff from the classics and then modern stuff in the 80s and 90s. And then I broke up the fantasy lists and such, and now we're looking at the horror films and so forth. And like I'll talk about here in a little bit, this will be the last horror top 10s that I'm doing a deep dive into for you folks and just unpacking and then just a heads up. But we'll talk a little bit more about that here, just a little minute, but just a heads up. But then tomorrow, if you are interested, is my Serial Saturday, the day I dedicate to the lost serial genre, and we're watching. And I've done my review of 1943's The Batman, set during the World War II. And for folks, in case you're interested in checking that out. So just a heads up. All right, so let's go ahead and get this thing started. All right, now, in order to make my list, it has to be typically a movie that's good with atmosphere, building that up slowly over time, right? I'm not looking for jump scares, which are cheap. I'm not looking for blood packs, which are cheap. I'm not looking for shock value, that's cheap. I'm looking for high, good, solid, quality horror, right? And the problem is that most modern horror, and there's tons of horror films, particularly in the 70s, aren't that good at what I like from a horror film, right? There are some here and there. For example, Let the Right One In is a modern horror film that's great, building up atmosphere and such over time, and doesn't have all this sort of the cheap things to lean on level odds. But that's pretty rare. So that's actually some of the things that I like to check out, right? And so for that reason, the 60s is pretty much the dominant decade and such. There's going to be just one or two films here and there from the 70s. But this is pretty much a 60s dominated decade, because the 60s are sort of the last swan song. And although a lot of 60s films begin to convert to the jump scares and that sort of a thing. But you'll see what I'm talking about when you start to see my list. So some things from the 60s are just, you might feel that they're sci-fi horror, or just more on the sci-fi side, but that's okay. I do think that there are some horror elements. That's the reason why they're on my chart. But it took me like 2 hours for me to make this chart. Typically, it takes like a half an hour or maybe 45 minutes for me to make these charts, and that's on for a couple of days. This one, it took me like a lot longer because I had to do a deeper dive into what was actually released and that I liked. And so forth in various places. Make sense? All right, now as a reminder, I'm going to be looking at these on my cell phone in 22-point font. So if you see me looking it down, it's that instead of giving you the eye contact that you deserve, that's the reason why. All right, so we have an honorable mention and then 10 films. Our honorable mention is from 1966. It's in the Hammer universe, set with Christopher Lee as Dracula, and this is the third film, Dracula, Terror of Darkness. Dracula's Wives is also pretty good too, but I don't think it's as strong, so it's not making this list, and so forth. So anyway, so what's happening here is that we have, again, no spoilers, but just a quick review. Basically, it's set back in his castle and so forth, and Christopher Lee is starring as Dracula, a role that he absolutely owned, and put him on the map in a big, huge, major way, and so forth. Great stuff. And so she's trying, and one of his servants is trying to do some stuff with some tourists. And so there you go. So this is a sequel to the previous two, and so forth. But it's pretty good. It stands on. I do like it. And solid stuff. That's Dracula, Prince of Darkness at number 11, basically, on honorable mention. And now top 10 proper. Number 10 is The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll. It's also by Hammer, and it also stars Christopher Lee Moore in a supporting role, not a major one. It's from number 10. The idea here is that it's a retelling of Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. But one of the reasons why I like it is that this retelling is much more realistic and psychological horror, rather than the sort of, he's a beast, oh my gosh, Hulk kind of thing. And so I like that here, the depiction of Dr. Jekyll normally is as just a kind of an innocent, not that nice, kind of just a boring, ordinary, average guy. And then Mr. Hyde is this suave and talking and debonair guy, right? The director here thought that this was a good take on it, because the idea here is that Mr. Hyde should be more of a suave and debonair bad guy, right? There is a seductiveness to evil, if you will, that you can get in this film. Love it a lot. So for that reason, that's number 10. The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll from 1960 Hammer. All right, now the number 9 is The Day of the Triffids in the early 60s. This is a retelling of a novel that I've read and done a review for the channel. It's a sci-fi fantasy horror novel. This is more of a sci-fi horror take, but this one might be the one that you're like, I think it's more sci-fi. It's okay, I don't mind if you do. It's still a good film. Love giving it a shout out. So basically what's happening here is that our primary point of view character is going in for eye surgery, and his eyes are about ready to start working, and then some nice astrological event happens at night. Some meteor showers, that sort of a thing, and a lot of his people and fellow patients and his nurses and so forth are watching it and saying, it's pretty, it's nice, I wish you could see it. And then in the morning they're all blind and he isn't. So that's basically the setup. And I think the creepiness, the bizarreness, and the atmosphere building here is great stuff. Love it lots. Novel, movie, and limited series too. Great stuff. Love it lots. Number 8 is The Last Man on Earth from 1964. This is the version of I Am Legend that stars Vincent Price. This is not the Omega Man, which stars in the 70s, which is more an action take on I Am Legend, which stars, obviously the guy who started, it was a big name at the time, Charlton Heston, and so forth. I thought about maybe including that one too, but I looked it up and it's just nobody considered that to be horror. This one is considered horror by a lot of folks. And the idea here is that Vincent Price's take on this character and the retelling of the novel, which I've also read and reviewed for you, I Am Legend, by Richard, is his interpretations, the darkness, the mood settings are all great stuff. And of course, Vincent Price is an absolute classic of classics. Love him lots. That's why he's here. Right now, he's put a horror on the map in a big way. So that's number 8, The Last Man on Earth. Now, number 7 is The Pit and the Pendulum. This also stars Vincent Price. This is a retelling of the Edgar Allan Poe classic from the early 60s. I do like it lots. The budget isn't that great. But I do like what the retelling is. It's loosely based. I wouldn't say it's like really solidly based on the Edgar Allan Poe short story. But I like what you're doing. I like the concepts. I like the basic interesting things. Right. I think Vincent Price is pretty good here too, as he is in pretty much all of his things. I don't remember a single thing that he did where he dialed it in. All right. So that was number 7, The Pit and the Pendulum. Now the last one before the top 5. Proper, and this is the last hitting Vincent Price. He has just had 3 in a row. Good job, Vincent Price. It's the Mask of the Red Death. This is a retelling of the Edgar Allan Poe, The Mask of the Red Death story. The idea here, the interpretation here is that our bad guy is Vincent Price is the director of a noble estate and so forth, and he's bringing in people that are surviving, but he's not a nice guy. He's definitely not nice at all, and so forth. And that is The Mask of the Red Death for you folks. Another, the best scoring Vincent Price of 3. That made my top 10. Good job, Vincent Price. And now, the top 5 proper. Number 5 is The Haunting. This is in the early 60s. It's a black and white. I think it's one of the best atmospheric films ever done. Period. End discussion. I love it lots. This is a retelling of Shelley Moore's The Haunting of Hill House. And I think it does such a strong job of it. I think it's just an absolute classic of classics. It's just so well done, so well shot, so well strict scripted, and so forth. I just absolutely adore this film from start to finish. And that's number 5's The Haunting. Now number 4 is the token film from the 70s. That's Alien, starring Ridley Scott, and so forth. Its concepts of sci-fi being sort of a messier and more realistic take compared to Star Wars are pretty good. I also think it's hugely influential. And that has lots of things, lots of scenes, and so forth. The atmosphere is creepy, the mood's creepy, the music creepy too. Right, and that's number 4 is Alien. For you folks, absolute classics by Ridley Scott. And that's the token film from the 70s. The rest were all 60s, including the last 30. All right, so the number 3 could be number 1 in a lot of people's lists. All right, I think you could probably put Alien on number 1 on the list. Yeah, I wouldn't mind it. But it's definitely one. It's by Alfred Hitchcock. It's called Psycho, also done in the early 60s too. This idea here, no spoilers, but the idea here of what they do and how they push and the atmosphere, the acting, the shocks that happen here very, very early on. I mean, it's just so well done, right? Right. So Psycho has to be on this list. Absolutely. Totally. Alfred Hitchcock was a master at suspense. Now, number 2 also is an Alfred Hitchcock film. It's my favorite Alfred Hitchcock film from these 2 decades, and that's The Birds for you folks. Again, no spoilers, but The Birds, it starts off as one genre of movie, and you're like, I like this movie. I think the movie's really good. And then like halfway through, it's like, uh-oh, this is a horror movie. All right, I think that's a pretty good surprise. I think what he pulls off, loves it lots, so I think it's pretty strong stuff. And that's The Birds, absolutely classics. I don't need to tell you why it's my number 2. If it's your number 1, it's fine. And then my number 1 is my number 1. It's black and white. I saw it on YouTube. It's past its copyrights. It was not renewed, so I'll link it to you because that's where I saw it. And it's a black and white film. Night of the Living Dead from 1968. This puts zombies on the map in a big, giant way, right? It's sort of trying to be an unofficial telling of I Am Legend, which is a not a zombie film, but a vampire film, right? But this definitely was hugely influential, hugely great. I think the atmosphere is great. I think the ending is amazingly good. I think the casting is strong. I think the atmosphere is great too. I think that this one is much more of an atmospheric film that does really strong jobs with that, and instead of like the shock of values and blood packs and shock and jump scares of later zombie films that are heavily known for it. So I think that the classic absolutely stands on its own by George Romero. All right, so there you are. So there, and again, if it's your number 1, that's totally fine because this is my number 1 too. All right, so here we go. So here are my top 11 again. Honorable mention was Dracula, A Prince of Darkness, starring Christopher Lee. Number 10, starting proper, is The Two Faces of Dr. Jekyll in 1960 by Hammer Films. Number 9 is the movie The Day of the Triffids. Number 8 is The Last Man on Earth. Number 7 is The Pit and the Pendulum. Number 6 is The Mask of the Red Death. Number 5 is The Haunting. Number 4 is Alien. Number 3 is Psycho. Number 2 is The Birds. And number 1 is Night of the Living Dead for you folks. All right, so there you are. So have you seen these films? What did you think about them? Did you agree or disagree with these in this rating? Would you put different films here? Would you drop them? And so forth. Some of them down the list. Let me know. This is just my list, right? I'm a fan. I'm not a trained critic. I'm not somebody who's trained on how to make films, right? And so forth. I'm just a fan, right? So your mileage is just as good as mine, right? And your opinions are just as valid as mine, right? Just let me know what your thoughts are, what your top 10 would be from each 2 decades, right? And sometimes movies, I haven't seen them, and if I haven't seen them, even if they might be a good film, according to a lot of people, I just haven't seen them, right? Right? I can only include those films I've personally seen. For example, I haven't seen The Exorcist. I know a lot of people probably would like that and put that on their list, but I just haven't seen it. So I can't put it on my list if I haven't seen it, right? And so forth. Anyway, so there, what are your films? That's just as valid as mine is. I think it's very, very important. And if you are a trained critic or, a filmmaker, then your opinion probably is better than mine, right? It's fine. Let me know. All right, and then, enjoy this. So if you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Like I said, I got the Serial Saturday for Batman tomorrow. I try to do Serial Saturday too, and I'll come back to something else. Hit the subscribe button, the like button, and hit the bell icon if you're feeling frisky. You'll be notified of my videos. And then also just let your friends know, right? On a lot of these older films and older serials and novels and so forth. Remember that my channel's name is The Worst Thing About New Books. That's a quote by a French philosopher, Jacques Joubert, who said that the worst thing about them was that they kept us from reading the old ones, right? And so I like to find older things, not always older books and so forth, but sci-fi, horror, and fantasy. I try to do a lot of these older books and novels, stuff like that too, in addition to these films. that are great stuff and tutorials too. So there you are. Thanks again for watching this and subscribing to all that fun stuff. And then I just want to thank you again so much for taking some time out of your day and investing it and watching my video, right? Because we all have so many things that are happening, right, in our lives, and we're pulled in so many different directions. So the fact that you spend time with me, that's incredibly humbling, and I appreciate it so much. So thanks again, and have an amazing day.